Hi, welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Writer Within. My name is Coach Kochek, and I help you improve your writing through practical tips and strategies that help you connect yourself and your audiences through the power of your writing. I am a huge believer that stories are what connect us, and you should share your story, but not just share your story to share it to change, share it to captivate your audience, express your thoughts, your feelings, your ambitions, your emotions. So I provide strategies here and information that you need to both start your writing journey or improve the journey that you're already on. So today I want to talk about ghostwriting because I believe that this industry in general is a skill and a service that is not talked about enough. And I think it is, there's a lot of misconceptions that surround it. And I also want to do a disclaimer by saying that not all ghostwriters are created equally. Not all ghostwriting firms are created equally. And I'm going to give you a story about it because when I saw this story, it broke my heart. So there's an influencer on social media, and I don't specifically follow her Instagram, but I've seen her so many times. She has millions of followers, right? And I saw this article that was talking about how she had released this book and she had published this book and she was being accused of plagiarizing the majority of this book, right? And automatically I thought she hired a bad ghostwriter. So I went to her page because she did this whole live on it. And sure enough, she was talking and she said that, she had admitted, like, I've never written a book. I didn't know how to write a book. I just knew that I had a story to tell. So I hired a company to help me do it. So in other words, she hired a ghostwriter. For some reason, saying the word ghostwriter, people struggle with that because when we hear ghostwriter, we think, oh, you're cheating. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute why it's not cheating and why there shouldn't be a negative connotation behind it, but just put a bookmark there. But anyway, she had to come on her Instagram channel and apologize to her audience because what had happened was that this firm or this company that she had hired went to all of these other blogs and literally copy and pasted chunks of other people's blogs and words and had put them in the book that they were supposed to be creating for her, put her name on it, and she released it, published it, and sold many copies, right? Because she's a very popular voice, especially within the millennial community. And it had really damaged her reputation. And she has since had to take all of her books off of the market. And now she's going through litigation with this company because they plagiarized without her knowledge. Okay, so that is essentially a horror story of what can happen when you don't really know what you should be looking for when you're looking for a ghostwriter and when you don't really know what a ghostwriter does. So I want to talk first of all about the things that bring people to want to use ghostwriting. So a lot of times we have the recognition that we have a story, right? It's very rare that I talk to somebody that hasn't been through something. If you've watched my channel long enough, you know that I do extraordinary stories with extraordinary people where I interview people who have phenomenal stories that they've been through something really great and they've come out on the other side and they have something to share and something that can impact lives. So the majority of us have that, right? But a lot of times the things that stop us from sharing our story are two things. One, we don't have the time, right? Like we've wrapped ourselves up in a lot of responsibilities and maybe we don't have enough time to dedicate to writing our story. And the second thing is we don't have the skill. Now, I'm somebody that believes that the power of writing is for everybody, that the creativity and the process of just expressing your story can be a skill that you can hone just like any other creative muscle in your body. But once again, it takes time. And some people just don't have that time or don't want to dedicate that time to that process. So they seek out a ghostwriter or they seek out somebody to help them do it. Now, when somebody is searching for a ghostwriter, the first thing that you need to know is more people use ghostwriters than you would imagine. A lot of celebrities, a lot of influencers, even a lot of career authors have ghostwriters who help them on their projects. And the reason why I say help them is because there's a difference between having the idea that when I say that I'm having a ghostwriter and I say, I have a story about overcoming and I want you to write my story. And then they just go to writing my story and I have no part in it. I take no part in that process. That's not what a ghostwriter is, and that's not what a ghostwriter does. So I want you to know that it is more common than you would imagine, that many people seek out ghostwriters and many people have ghostwriters and you wouldn't even know it, okay? And I want you to specifically know the majority of celebrities or books that you have read by people that you know and that you love their writing style, they've either had a ghostwriter do the entire project, or they've had a career author or writer who specializes in that help them through that process. Okay. Now, ghostwriting is not plagiarism, and ghostwriting is not cheating. So let me talk to you about the process that I use and the process that you should be looking for when you are looking for a ghostwriter, because there's so many people who claim to have the ability to be a ghostwriter. And what happens is, and I'm telling you, I've heard this more times than not, where someone will put down the money to invest into the ghostwriting and they'll either get an incomplete project or they'll get writing that is so horribly done, but it's too late because they haven't signed a contract or they've invested so much money thus far and they'll end up just not even having the project complete. When you're going through the process of searching for a ghostwriter, you need to find somebody who doesn't just want you, who is not a transcriber. There's a difference between a ghostwriter and a transcriber. So a transcriber is just somebody who's just going to take my words and type it down verbatim, or who's just going to ask me questions and then just type my answers from those questions, right? That's a transcriber. That's not a ghostwriter. When we are talking about a ghostwriter, when I go through the process of ghostwriting, I am so adamant about the idea of tonality, passion, and the emotional journey that you are taking the reader on. So I'm going to give you an example. One of my clients that I was working with, right, she had a phenomenal story, like this really great story of overcoming. And every time I heard her tell the story, not a dry eye, like people resonated with the power and the emotion behind her story. When she tried to sit down and actually write the story, she sent it to me and it fell flat. It was like everything that I loved about the telling of the story was lost in the writing of it. So as a ghostwriter, it is my job and it is my duty to dig for the parts of your story that need to be communicated that are going to bring about the emotional connection with your journey. So when I have my clients go through the process, I have them straight record their stories. So I'll sit down and we'll build out the foundations of their book, right? Who's your audience? What are you talking about? What's the pain point of your audience? Why are you writing this book? If your ghostwriter's not asking you those questions, they don't understand that when you are writing a book, you have to identify, how is this book different than the 1 million+ books that are out there? How is this book sticking out? Who is the audience behind this book? So if we don't know who the audience is, we won't know the style with which this book is supposed to be written. After that, we outline the book, right? So we take your story and we decide, how is this going to flow best? What parts of your story are we bringing up? How is this going to flow most effectively? After I do that, then I ask them, I take them week by week, we take each chapter of the book and I have them record. I don't have them write anything. Why? Because as a ghostwriter, I don't want someone to read the book and say, oh, this is a really, really great book about Amy's story, but I don't hear Amy in it, right? It's like, it's Amy's story, but I know Amy and that doesn't sound like Amy. What I want is for somebody to read the story and say, man, this is Amy's story. I can hear her. I can feel her emotion. So when I'm writing, I want you to think about, like, a ghostwriter is almost like a medium, right? Like, I'm channeling the voice of my client and I am putting it into the story. So when I'm listening to my client do the recordings and they're recording specific parts of their story, I am not just like writing down words. I'm listening, I'm feeling, I'm being in the moment, because if I write it, I have to be in the moment so that the reader can be in the moment, right? So it becomes like this team effort between me and my client, which is why I'm saying it's not plagiarism. I'm simply the medium, the person that is giving me their story that I'm using their words, I'm using their emotions, I'm using their experiences, and I'm just the medium, right? So for me, and as a ghostwriter, I don't promise my clients that I'm going to get the book done in a month, right? And I know a lot of times when you go through ghostwriting, it's like really like, we can get this done quickly. I don't, if it's between quick and quality, I want quality. Because if you can write my book in a month and it's very technical and maybe you have all the details, but it's missing the passion, just like the example I gave you. Oh, my mic almost fell. Just like I gave you the example, where all the technicalities of her story were there, but all the things that made the story worth listening to were gone, the power behind it. So you want someone that's going to really invest not just in the details of your story, but the emotion of your story, the power of your story, the transformation of your story, and really focusing on how do we make this powerful so that the audience reading it can experience the true change that you are desiring for your audience to receive. Okay. So it's really important that when you are reaching out to a ghostwriter, that you are really asking, what does the process look like? How are we going through this? If they are just sending you page after page documents of just you answering questions and you're typing out the answer to those questions, that's a transcriber. That's not a ghostwriter. Your ghostwriter should be asking you about feelings. Your ghostwriter should be asking you about, like, how am I going to be able to transcend this moment of just details to express the emotions behind it, right? And the reason why ghostwriting is such a, sometimes ghostwriting can be such a more pricier tag than it would be if you were going through a writing coach is because obviously the sweat equity involved from a ghostwriter's perspective. And then I want to say the positive part of it is that you are getting the process of the entire book being written in the way that you want to write it. It's like what would have taken you years, or maybe you would have never written it, it's now being done by a ghostwriter. But the beautiful thing is that when you are done with the ghostwriting process, and you need to make sure that you have gone into some form of contract with your ghostwriter. Don't go into a ghostwriting relationship without an understanding of the contract involved. Because if you go in and you start giving your story to somebody else without understanding the contract, you might be giving your creative rights away to a freelancer or to a company. So you need to look at your contract and determine, when I'm done with you as a ghostwriter, do I keep 100% of my creative rights? Because some ghostwriters and some ghostwriting companies will take a percentage, which means every book you sell, I take a percentage of that. Some ghostwriters will do a lump sum, which is what I do. So I'll do a lump sum at the beginning. And when we are done, when our partnership is done and the book is completely ready to be published, I then give you, and this is in contractual, I give you your book to keep all creative rights and all profits from that point forward. And you also want to make sure that you have a non-disclosure agreement that you've signed, an NDA, before you even start, because you don't want someone to have the power of your story and they are able to use it in the future, or they're able to use your name, or they're able to use your story. So if I'm saying I did ghostwriting for this client and I say their name, it's because we are contractually, I have in the contract, I am able to use their name. But then other people, I'll just say my client, because there's an NDA attached to that. So you need to make sure that there's privacy behind that. One of the greatest benefits is that not only do you have the book, now with ghostwriting, you have someone that covers your editing, because you're getting a full book. So when you're paying for a ghostwriter, you're paying not only for the creation of the story, but you're also paying for someone to edit. If that doesn't come along with your ghostwriting package, you need to question the validity of that ghostwriter, because that's what should come with it, is editing. And then if you want to find a ghostwriter that either has the ability to get you connected to the publishing community. So you need to hear words like they can give you a query letter, which means that they're able to give you the information you need to pitch your books to other publishing companies, or they have the ability to take you through self-publishing, which is where I siphon a lot of my clients to, because it's so cost efficient. It is from an economic standpoint, it's economically sound, and especially for a first-time writer, it is the easiest tool that you can use. And all of that should go through Amazon, right? So you want to look for a ghostwriter that's taking you just beyond creating your story to what are the next steps? How are we publishing this book? So it's really important when you are shopping around that you're hearing some of those keywords, especially when it's about publishing and editing. Another thing is you want to ask for samples. Ask them, can you send me specific books that I can see that you have published? So a lot of times they'll send you like their book covers, which is perfect. I would also ask them, can I see a sample of your actual writing in a book? A lot of times I'll either, once again, this goes back to if I'm giving them a book that I've ghostwritten, I had to have specific permission from that author to use it. So I have a couple of them, but the majority of my authors, I don't have permission, so I can't send that. So if that's the case, you can send some of your personal writing. You should be able to get personal writing from a ghostwriter to get their style. But the thing that you're looking for is looking at their ability to write, just their ability to write. And I know that sounds simple, but I had one client that came to me who had invested $7,000 into a ghostwriter. And when the client started getting their content back, the person didn't even know how to write without making grammar errors. That's a nightmare. Okay, so you want to make sure that they have the capability of writing and that you get multiple samples of what they are doing. Also, you want in the process to be getting back materials to see what they are creating. With everybody that I ghostwrite for, I make sure that I am sending them chapters at a time so they can make sure that what I am producing, first of all, sounds like them. That's what I always tell my clients. Does this sound like you? If there is a phrase, if there's phrases, if there's wording that doesn't sound like you, highlight it, make changes to it, give me feedback. Because once again, this is a partnership. And that's really important for you to be a part of it. A lot of ghostwriters will say, I'm going to do it all myself, and you can just sit back. You shouldn't want that because this is your story, which is, I come back to the story at the beginning. The reason why this influencer was completely blindsided is because she wasn't in partnership. There's no way she could have been, because if she were, she would have caught that before it was published on a larger scale. So if you are having consistent looks at the book at a chapter at a time, then you won't find yourself at the end getting a product in your hand that's saying, this is not me. This is not my story. I have lost myself in this process. So it's really important to stay current with what's being produced when you are going through the ghostwriting process. So if you are in search of a ghostwriter, or you're looking for, or you know someone that's looking for a ghostwriter, or you just want to research that more, I encourage you to do your research and to see what's out there, and don't just jump into the process of doing it, because it can be a really powerful and easier way for you to get your story out without you just letting it die inside of you. And if you're saying, okay, I'm not really sure if ghostwriting is for me, but it sounds intriguing, reach out to me. I can answer any of your questions. But one of the most important things is I just want to make sure that if you do go down this route, that you stay informed, that you don't walk into anything blind, so that you're not wasting money. Because I just believe that people's stories are so powerful, and they should be treated as such. If you, once again, ghostwriting is a business, but if your story is treated just transactionally and is not cherished in the way that it should be cherished in the process, it's not for you. That is not an environment for you. Go to an environment that's going to give you the skill of ghostwriting, but is also going to give you the heart of writing that goes along with it, because that's what your story deserves. So thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Unlocking the Writer Within. My name is Coach Kochek, and I will see you next time.